Hey there, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hold on one second here. There we go. Hopefully they can see me now. Sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure what was going on with my computer. It just froze right before I went live. So wanted to make sure I could get in here, and hopefully you guys weren't waiting too long. So once again, apologize for the technical delay. I'm not sure what was going on again. Anyway, so today, it's Thursday. It's our time for our live training session. So I wanted to talk to you guys about, obviously, sleep. Sleep is something that's very important, and we obviously don't get enough of. So that's why I wanted to bring it up today and to go over what happens when we don't get good quality sleep. So the first thing, obviously, is sleep is absolutely vital to our survival and function. Without it, our body just does not work well. And many of us take it for granted. We don't even really think about it unless we're like super tired. But this lack of sleep that we are, as a society, perpetually in is actually affecting us in many more ways than we're aware of. So before we dive into that, though, let's briefly recap here with the different stages of sleep so that way we have an understanding of when I get into the sleep disturbance part, it'll help you remember. So our bodies have a sleep cycle that's divided roughly into 4 to 5 stages, depending on who you ask. But it used to be 4 stages, but the American Academy of Sleep Medicine in 2000 switched it to 5. So this is where some discrepancy is, but the standard practice right now is 5 is the categories of sleep. And the first 3 stages are known as non-rapid eye movement, or Nrem sleep. And then the next stage is Rem sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep. So these stages, the Rem sleep stages, the Nrem sleep stages actually go ahead and... I'm sorry, I just realized that I misquoted what I was saying before. It used to be 5 stages, it's now down to 4. So I had that backwards, so bear with me. So we have 3 stages of Nrem, 1 stage of Rem sleep. So this means that you cycle back and through these different stages throughout the night. So you start in Nrem 1, progress to Nrem 2, Nrem 3, and then you end up in Rem sleep. And the duration of each cycle, meaning all 4 of them put together, lasts somewhere about 90 to 120 minutes. So you spend about 75 to 80% of that 90 to 120 minutes in Nrem sleep. So Nrem is very vital in addition to Rem sleep. It is also important. Nrem, during this time, it's thought that your growth and repair takes place, energy is restored throughout your body, and the hormones that are essential for growth and development are dispersed. So obviously, super important functions, right? Rem is the part of the sleep where dreaming occurs. And this is where your mind is actually processing and consolidating your emotions, memories, and stress from throughout that day. So during Nrem, you're getting the physical benefits of sleep. During Rem sleep, you're getting the mental benefits of sleep. That's why both stages are very important. And if you have interruption in either one or both of these, it can obviously significantly impact your ability to function every day. It's also important to note that during REM sleep, the brain regions that help control learning and development of new skills is stimulated. So this is why REM sleep is also important. So let's break down what the different stages essentially mean. As far as Nrem Stage One is that transition between wakefulness and sleep. And it consists of like a light sleep. You can be easily woken up during this stage. Oftentimes you might wake yourself up. If you've ever had where you're starting to fall asleep and then you end up with like this, you jerk yourself awake because, something, your thoughts, some sound, something woke you up. That's the stage of sleep you're in. You're in Nrem Stage 1. And during this stage, obviously your body's getting ready for sleep. So your muscles are relaxing, your breathing's slowing down, your heart rate's slowing down. It's getting your body ready to transition from wake to sleep. Typically it lasts about 5 to 10 minutes, so it's not very long. And obviously your brain's still very active during this period because you're not fully asleep yet. With Nrem Stage 2, this is where you're starting to get into that deeper sleep. So your heart rate and your breathing rate continues to slow down. It's going to start to reflect that. Your muscles are becoming more relaxed. Your eye movements will cease. That means they're going to stop moving. And this is also when your body temperature decreases, because when we're sleeping, we're not moving around as much, so our body temperature actually lowers. So And this is where your brain's you're gonna start to see bursts of activity in your brain waves. And so this part of that is thought to be part of that memory consolidation part. And you spend about approximately 50% of your total sleep time in this stage throughout the night. And for each cycle, it lasts about 20 minutes. So when you think of how long, if that's 50% of your sleep, then you're spending, a significant amount of time in this stage. And it's only 20 minutes of each cycle. So it doesn't seem like it's that much of the cycle, but it's a lot of what you spend your time in. So Nrem Stage 3 is the part that really helps you feel refreshed, alert, more energized for that next day. And this is the physical repair stage that I was talking about before. Your heart rate, your breathing, your brainwave, all these activities reach their lowest point during Nrem Stage 3. So your muscles are going to be as relaxed as they're possibly going to be during sleep, during Nrem Stage 3. Essentially, it's the deepest part of sleep. So this is where when you talk about deep sleep, that's what we're in. It's very hard to wake up from this particular stage. And so it'll be throughout the night. During the first cycle of sleep, it's going to be its longest. And then with each subsequent cycle, the duration of Nrem Stage 3 actually gets shorter because your body doesn't need it as much because it's, processing and physically repairing everything. Now we're moving on to REM sleep. So you've made it through the first 3 stages of Nrem. We're now on to REM, and with REM, this occurs about 90 minutes after you fall asleep during that first cycle. During this phase, this is where your eyes are going to move rapidly. Obviously, your eyes are closed, so it's behind your eyelids, but they're moving rapidly. Your breathing rate, your heart rate, your blood pressure all begin to increase, and your brain activity level actually resembles most similar to what it is when you're awake. This is where the dreaming occurs. Key thing here, obviously, is your body has a protective mechanism so you don't hurt yourself. Because obviously when we're dreaming, sometimes it can be very vivid and very realistic. So it's supposed to paralyze you temporarily. Your body has this natural mechanism built in so that way you don't get injured. So that way you're hopefully not moving your arms and legs acting out your dreams. Obviously, sometimes, people, if you are dreaming and then it transitions to a different stage of sleep, this is where sometimes you're moving or, and can wake you up or wake a partner up. So this is why it's important that you have, obviously, all these different stages because they all function, in a huge way as far as making sure that your body is able to do what it needs to the next day. And studies have shown that if you're deprived of REM sleep and then another subsequent night of undisturbed sleep, you will enter the stage earlier and spend a longer portion of time in this stage. And this is called Rem Rebound. It's your body trying to, get back what it was essentially missing from a previous night's sleep that was disrupted. So essentially the sequencing, and this is what I want to talk about a little bit before we get into what happens when you have disturbed sleep. The sequencing doesn't mean you progress through all 4 stages regularly throughout the night. Instead, when you have a full night of uninterrupted sleep, you start obviously with Nrem Stage 1 because you're transitioning from wakefulness to sleep, and then you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, then you will repeat 2, and then you end up in REM sleep. So as you can see, this is where you're spending a significant amount of time in Nrem Stage 2, as I talked about. That's 50% of our sleep. So, then once REM sleep is over, you usually return to Nrem Stage 2 before beginning the cycle all over again without the Stage 1 component. And so this is why this Nrem Stage 2 is such a huge part of this, is because you spend a lot of time in it because your body's repeating that stage over and over and over again. So despite being labeled 1, 2, 3, and then essentially REM sleep is Stage 4, the way your body goes through it is different. It's just the way they had to categorize it in some fashion. So when we're talking about numbers, and this is something hugely important, did you know that human beings spend about 1/3 of their lives sleeping? When you think about it, that's a lot of time, right? We spend a lot of time sleeping. So obviously it's important because our body needs it. Otherwise we wouldn't spend that much time sleeping. We don't sleep as much as obviously some animals. Obviously cats sleep like 18 to 20 hours a day. That's a huge amount of time. And surveys conducted by the National Sleep Foundation, the NSF, have found that at least 40 million Americans suffer from over 70 different sleep disorders. That is a lot of people who have trouble sleeping at night. And 60% of adults report sleeping problems at least a few nights a week or more. And most of these sleeping problems go undiagnosed and therefore untreated, which obviously impacts your sleep. And then this means that over 40% of adults experience daytime sleepiness that is severe enough to interfere with their daily activities at least a few days each month. That's a lot. And when about 20% of people in this survey reported sleepiness a few days a week or more. So according to the Department of Transportation, the DOT, this year 1 to 4% of all highway crashes are due to sleepiness. Usually these are in rural areas, and 4% of these crashes are fatal. Per the National Highway Safety Administration, the NHSA, falling asleep while driving is responsible for at least 100,000 crashes, 71,000 injuries, and 1,550 deaths every year. So that, to me, is a huge factor here, is that if you're that sleepy that you fall asleep while driving, obviously it has significant impact, not only on your life, but it could impact someone else's. And this is why, that's just one area. Obviously, sleepiness while driving is a problem. Sleepiness while other things in your life also has detrimental effects, maybe not quite as severe as what happens when you're driving, but it can have huge impacts. So, this is where even as little as 24 hours without sleep can cause significant issues. So, most common signs of a single night of inadequate sleep, you're going to be irritable, moody, and lazy feeling. You're not going to feel motivated to do anything the next day. If you continue this process of not getting enough sleep each night, you're going to have impaired memory, slowed speech, lack of emotional response, and you're going to have difficulty doing multiple tasks. If it's to the point where it's severe, you're falling asleep for a few seconds at a time while doing activities, such as driving or even reading. When you're really tired, think of it this way, and you're trying to read a book, and while the book might be enjoyable, all of a sudden you start feeling yourself nodding off. That's your body's way of saying, hey, you haven't had enough sleep. You need to get more sleep. Make sure you're listening to that. Some people, if it's so severe, you actually might start experiencing hallucinations as your body starts to go into those early stages of sleep while you're still awake. So if you've ever experienced this means you're severely sleep deprived. Okay? So what are the long-term effects of lack of sleep? So obviously I described what you could be feeling, but physically you can actually have, you consume more calories because you don't have good appetite regulation when you're tired. This means you can have increased body weight, so you can end up being obese. It also increases your risk of type 2 diabetes. You have a higher risk of heart disease and stroke. Abnormal hormone regulation. Most people underestimate the power of hormones in our body, and if they're not in good regulation, how much of an impact this actually has. You can have decreased immune system function. So you're at higher risk of being sick, which obviously your body's already run down because it's sleep deprived, so this is not a good thing. You'll have increased inflammation, and we're coming to find out, thanks to all this different research out there, just how bad inflammation is for our body. Increased chance of depression. Obviously, if you're not feeling great, your mood's not going to be great, and then that just progresses into actual medical condition. You'll have the decreased ability for concentration and productivity. Obviously, think about it. When we're tired, we don't feel like doing something, so you're not going to be productive. It's hard to focus when you're trying to read something or work on something. You'll have reduced athletic performance. When our body's physically tired, we don't perform physically as well. And then you're going to have impaired emotional responses and social interactions. Think about when we're, tired. We're not necessarily the most fun people to be around. Typically, we're pretty moody, right? And this means that, how we interact with others, probably not the best. So, and there's, certain things can affect sleep, and that cause all these different other things to happen. Physical disturbances could be chronic pain. Obviously, if you're in pain, it's hard to sleep, right? Headaches, fibromyalgia. You can have medical issues like sleep apnea. That's a huge one that a lot of people deal with. Many people don't even know that they have it. They just know they're tired all the time. Psychiatric disorders, obviously depression and anxiety make it hard to sleep. And then it starts this vicious cycle where obviously if you're not getting enough sleep, it makes your depression and anxiety worse. Environmental issues. Is your room too bright? Does your partner snore and keep you awake? So there's a lot of factors that can affect how good quality of sleep you're actually getting. So I want to dive into a few of these in a little bit further detail. Obviously, one of the most important external factors that is completely within your control is how much light is in the room when you're trying to sleep. And this is, that's part of it. The other part of it is with the invention of the light bulb, people stay awake now much longer than we used to. Therefore, we're getting much less sleep than we used to. And so we're being exposed to light later in the evening, which sets off our internal clock. It helps it to not function appropriately, because normally our body gets cues from sunlight. And what it's telling you, sun's up, you need to get up. Sun goes down, it's time to go to sleep. And with the light bulb, we're sending missed signals, to our brain saying, hey, it's light out, I can stay awake. Well, that's not necessarily what your brain's trying to tell you. You need to be able to listen to that. And so this is where, obviously, light exposure towards the end of the day, especially if it's bright light, might actually make you stay awake and you'll have trouble sleeping. Obviously, if your room has lights on in it when you're trying to sleep at night, that's not helpful either. Your body gets external cues that help to regulate internal stuff. Another big factor, and this one's huge for a lot of people, is stress. Stress can cause a significant amount of sleep trouble, especially if it's short-term stress. It might be a short-term problem. If you have chronic stress, you could be chronically sleep deprived. And this is, obviously besides the factors of stress being bad for your body, this is huge, obviously, when it impacts your sleep and how that also is bad for your body. Caffeine. Caffeine's another big one. I know a lot of people love coffee. I'm not one of those people. I do, obviously, drink tea. I drink other items that have caffeine sometimes in them. But caffeine's a stimulant. It's designed to block adenosine receptors in your brain. And adenosine is supposed to build up during wakefulness. And as the levels increase, the chemicals begin to inhibit brain cells that promote alertness, giving rise to the sleepiness we experience when we've been awake for many hours. So the whole point is, when you have adenosine building up, then that means that your body's, woke up, adenosine is low, it starts to build throughout the day, so by the time you get to the end of the day, it's supposed to be high enough that you actually get sleepy. With caffeine, it's actually blocking this process. So this means that your nerves, maintain their activity and you stay alert. That's the whole chemical process that happens inside. So that can be problematic if you have caffeine, especially if it's too late in the day, if you're not used to having caffeine and have some. And caffeine will decrease the quantity of slow wave sleep in REM sleep and tends to increase the number of times you awaken during the night. So this is why it's important. Be careful with caffeine. If you drink caffeinated beverages, then make sure you're not consuming them too late in the day. It's a big concern there. Another big one is alcohol. A lot of people use this as a sleep aid. And while it does make you sleepy, meaning you'll fall asleep more quickly, the quality of your sleep when you drink alcohol is actually compromised. Because as your body metabolizes it, then you are awake. And so this is something to be aware of. Obviously, don't consume too much alcohol. Don't consume alcohol too frequently. Another key point here is if you have sleep apnea, alcohol can actually make that worse. So definitely be careful with that. And then once again, as I was talking about sleep environment, this is something that is so huge. You have to create the right environment to be able to sleep, because if you're not, you're going to get woken up. One thing we touched upon was the light level in your room. That's huge. Another one, noise level. A lot of people will go to sleep watching TV or watching something on their phone. This is, or unfortunately, things will keep playing, so the noise is loud, and that might wake you up at some point. Room temperature is another big one. Too hot, too cold. I know for me, I don't like it either way, but there's factors, obviously, you can control that with. Covers, or put a fan in your room, or whatever you need to do to make it more of a temperate environment for you to sleep in. Obviously, interruptions from children and other family members. As I mentioned, if your partner snores or if you have little kids who come in the middle of the night, they're going to wake you up, right? And that can impact significantly, your quality of sleep. The comfort and size of your bed. I mean, is your mattress been replaced recently? How about your pillow? Is it too small? So that's some of these things that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to examine, your sleep habits, essentially. Couple of other factors I want to touch upon real quickly as far as that can influence sleep. Exercising too close to bedtime. Eating too close to bedtime, because obviously your body's trying to digest everything. So if you eat too close to bedtime, it interferes with the process of going to sleep. Nicotine use. Nicotine is a stimulant like caffeine. So if you smoke, cigarettes, vape, any of those, that can impact your quality of sleep. Having an irregular schedule. Our bodies do really well when it knows, okay, I'm getting up at this time, I'm doing this at this time. As far as actual physical functions, obviously what we do during the day, that can vary, but as far as waking, sleeping, and eating, usually our body likes a very predictive schedule on that. Obviously everybody's different, but most people that's helpful. Working or doing otherly mentally intense activities right before getting into bed. That might keep you awake, because obviously your brain's still trying to work through whatever you were working on, and it takes a while for it to slow down. Being older, when we age, we actually naturally become a lighter sleeper, and therefore we're more easily awoken. Nocturia, and this means you're frequently getting up to urinate. This can obviously happen for several reasons. Obviously with age, there's a natural aging process that occurs that many people feel the need to wake up. If you drink too much fluid, water, whatever, before bed, this can also increase, obviously, you need to get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So try to limit how much fluid you drink, starting a couple hours before bed. Sleep disorders, as we mentioned, sleep apnea. There's also things like restless leg syndrome, because obviously if your legs are moving around, it can keep you awake, might keep your partner awake. We talked about pain. We talked about other mental health conditions as far as, how that impacts sleep. And then other health conditions such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, obesity, heart disease, and asthma. All of these impact your ability to be able to get a good night's sleep. So, now we're going to switch over and we're going to talk about how to get a good night's sleep. With key thing here, it's similar to diet, similar to exercise. In order to have a good night's sleep, you need to plan for it. You need to make it a priority, and this is something that I strongly encourage you guys to do, because obviously we know what negative impacts, in not only short-term but long-term, lack of sleep can have. So this is where, unfortunately over the past several decades, sleep quality and sleep quantity have actually declined societally. And this is not good. We need to be able to, people need sleep. So we need to find a way to help people achieve that. And so one of the big factors, as I mentioned, is you want to set aside enough time to sleep. And obviously everybody's different as far as how much their body needs. It's also dependent on age. But for most adults, you need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night in order to wake up feeling refreshed. And I know for me, if I don't get at least 7, I don't function as well the next day. And it's gotten to the point where if I'm not able to get my 7 hours of sleep, I am not a happy camper even the night before. It's because I'm like, you need 7 hours minimum of sleep. Hey, Chelsea, thank you for joining me. So that's a big factor. So one of the things you want to try to do is, you'll know if you're getting enough sleep, is that if you're able to wake up without having to set an alarm clock. And obviously I realize for most people who have to go to work and all that, you still need to set an alarm clock just to make sure that you're up in time. But if you're able to get up and without the alarm clock, that's your body's way of being able to say, hey, you've had enough sleep. As far as weekends versus weekdays, the big thing here is you want to try to stay on the same schedule and don't differentiate in more than about an hour. So if you want to sleep in a little bit, don't sleep in more than an hour, because this will throw off your whole schedule as far as when you're going to be tired in the evening time. So this is going to help keep your body consistent on that sleep-wake cycle. And then you want to also create a wind-down routine in the evening. And this should start somewhere about 60 to 90 minutes before you actually go to sleep. And so, you can do quiet reading. You can do like low-impact stretching. This is really great because obviously it helps if you've exercised during the day. Listen to soothing music, do some relaxation exercises like breathing techniques. If you enjoy taking a bath or a shower and that helps you relax, that's a great way to do that. Key thing here, though, is if you get into bed and after 20 minutes you're still not asleep, go ahead and get back up and do something relaxing and then go to bed when you're tired. And then if you're still not sleeping, you repeat this as needed, because you don't want to lay in bed and just lay there awake. And that is something that is important, because you're trying to train your body that your bed is for sleep. It's not to be there to wake to read. It's not there just to lay there. Yes, Chelsea, I know. I'm bad at that myself as far as the weekend sleeping thing, so I'm trying to be better on that one. So the next thing when it comes to sleep environment, as I talked about, it needs to be cool, dark, and quiet. So most people find it somewhere around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, a cool, comfortable temperature. Obviously, some people like it colder, some people like it warmer. And if you can use room darkening shades to make sure it's dark, earplugs if the noise bothers you, a fan if you get hot. White noise machines are actually really great as far as making sure there's no real background noise. And as we were mentioning before, pillow and mattress should be comfortable. So if you haven't replaced them in a while, you might want to consider doing that. If you've noticed that you're not waking up and you're feeling, uncomfortable due to like muscle stiffness, that could be because your pillow and mattress need to be replaced. And so, as I mentioned, you want to use your bed only basically for sleeping. You don't want to use it for reading. You want to get your body in that mindset of, this is my place to sleep. And then with light exposure, as we were talking about, light exposure plays a huge role because it influences our internal body clock. And so you want to spend time during each day outside, because this is going to expose your body to sunlight, which is, our natural setting point for our body clock. And so this is helpful in that regard, but you also want to limit the amount of artificial light before sleep, at least about 1 to 2 hours. So this means that ideally, you should be turning off TVs, phones, and any other electronic devices that emit that blue light. And because this can interrupt those hormones that influence your body's, getting ready for sleep. There are glasses available that block this blue light, or you can download apps that do this. So that way, if you're using your phone or something for reading, that's, one of my favorite things about my Kindle is it's purposely designed not to do that, but there are ways to mitigate it if you are using, your phone to read. When it comes to sleep and diet, this is something that's also important that many people don't realize how closely linked the two are. Key thing, you want to start your day with a great breakfast, healthy breakfast, because this is letting your body know, that internal clock, that it's time to wake up and get going. And then if you skip breakfast, this delays your natural blood sugar rhythm in your body, and it'll cause you to feel like you have less energy. You're going to have more stress. Another big factor that really impacts our body's, obviously, sugar levels is how much sugary food or refined carbs we're eating. When you eat lots of foods with either of these during the day, it can trigger you to be awake at night and actually make you have less of that deep restorative sleep your body needs. So you want to make sure that you try to limit how much of those you're eating, but especially how much of those you're eating later in the day. With caffeine, as I mentioned, you want to try to limit that close to bedtime. Usually, ideally, that's about 4 to 6 hours before going to bed. You should cut out caffeine because it takes about that long for your body to process it. And then obviously be careful with alcohol, since obviously, as we talked about, that rebound effect with alcohol, that once your body initially you're going to fall asleep, but once your body metabolizes it, it's going to cause you to be more awake during the night. Don't eat large meals right before bed, because your body needs to be able to digest that food. And in order to digest food, that's a wakeful process versus an actual sleeping process. Your body can't go to sleep or sleep well if it's trying to digest food. Also, don't go to bed hungry, though, because obviously if you're hungry and your stomach's grumbling, it's going to keep you awake. So if you need to, have like a small healthy snack, not right before you go to sleep, but a little bit before. This way it'll help tide you over, so that way your stomach's got something in it, so you're not awoken by it, but it's also not so much that it's going to make you wake up as well. When it comes to drinking fluids, as far as you want to limit that about 1 to 2 hours before going to bed. This way it's not going to wake you up in the middle of the night saying that, hey, you've got to go to the bathroom. And if you sleep poorly, this is something that is something most people are not aware of, is you should try to limit your sugar intake the following day, because your insulin levels are actually going to be slightly disrupted. So by limiting your sugar, it's going to help your body actually process, the lack of sleep, and you're not going to perpetuate the cycle going forward. When it comes to exercise and sleep, this is something that obviously is very important, because obviously if you're physically active, you're going to be physically tired. So you want to get at least about 20 minutes of aerobic exercise every day. You just don't want to exercise too late in the day, because obviously, your body's, pumped up from that, and it's going to keep you awake rather than allow your body to naturally go through the sleep stage process. Keep in mind, it can take several months of, doing regular physical activity to get that sleep promoting benefit of exercise. So it's something you got to stick with, but once you get down to it, the habits and it sticks, it's going to be definitely beneficial. As far as stress with sleep, obviously this is something that hugely impacts sleep. Try to resolve anything that's specifically worrying you or concerning you before you go to sleep. Great way to be able to do this is to write down whatever's on your mind on a piece of paper and then set it aside for tomorrow. Often that physical act of actually writing it down is enough that our brain is able to be like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it, because I've got it down essentially as a reminder. And that is, super helpful as far as being able to get sleep. Another aspect is stress management can help. Certain things that can help you start this process is, get organized as far as setting priorities, delegating any tasks that you can, create a schedule. Obviously, if you have family, get everybody's things all on this calendar. That way everybody can see what's going on. And then if you need help with a certain area, you can obviously ask for help or figure out what you need to do as far as that goes. Meditation can help ease anxiety. Breathing techniques can help with that as well. So all of these factors can help reduce stress. Obviously, when you reduce stress, you're going to sleep better. When people often ask about naps, and so the big thing here is that if you do nap, keep them short, so no more than 20 to 30 minutes, because this prevents your body from getting into the very deep stages of sleep, but gives you that restorative thing of your body's had enough sleep that it can continue to function. And if you're going to nap, do it in the early afternoon. Often in the morning time, you're not going to be tired enough to nap. And if you're going to nap, you don't want to nap too late, because this will impact your wanting to go to sleep later in the day. So this is something to keep in mind. If you are going to nap, that it can be something that is super helpful for a lot of people, especially if you're really tired. 20 to 30 minutes is enough to give you that boost of energy that you feel restored, that you can continue with your day without impacting, your ability to go to sleep later. A couple of other considerations here. Don't smoke or use nicotine products, because obviously we know that keeps you awake, and obviously they're unhealthy for you anyway. And avoid accumulating sleep debt by continually missing sleep. This is something that I can't stress enough. You have to get good quality sleep. And if you put your body in this constant state of sleep deprivation, obviously it's going to impact your ability to function, and that's not something that you want. Big thing here is if you aren't sure of how you're sleeping, you might want to consider tracking your sleep with like a wearable device. Many of them estimate not only your total sleep time, but they'll go over quality. I used to have a exercise band that I would wear that would obviously tell me my physical movement throughout the day, and it came with an app because you can put your food in and it looks at all this, but it also could track your sleep. And it was really cool because it would show you, what stages of sleep, how long did you spend in there, were you awoken during the middle of the night, all these, how long were you awake, and then you could really get a good picture of what your sleep pattern was like. And a great thing is you can try keeping a daily sleep journal. So this means you can keep track of how well you're sleeping, identify factors that might be helping or hurting your sleep. It's important to create an awareness, because then you know if you need to change anything. And some people often ask about melatonin supplements, and they are a popular sleep aid that doesn't usually produce major side effects. Obviously, depending on how your body metabolizes it, it might take a little bit, depending on if you get up too soon or if you take the medicine too late, that you'll actually wake up a little bit drowsy, but that goes away quickly. So most people take somewhere between 1 to 5 milligrams about 30 to 60 minutes before going to bed. It takes about that long to kick in. You want to start obviously with the lowest dose possible and then assess your tolerance for it and then increase it slowly as needed. Melatonin might alter brain chemistry, so it's advised that you check with a healthcare provider before using it. Obviously, if you take any other supplements, medications, definitely check with a pharmacist or healthcare provider to make sure there's no interactions. And the key thing with melatonin is you should not need it every night. You know, it's one of those things that's a supplement that if you're having trouble falling asleep and you need to, you know, you're starting to get behind on sleep, make sure you take one, get a good night's sleep, but you should not need to take melatonin every single night. I use it, not obviously regularly, but use it enough that, yes, it does have a significant benefit. And I try to use it only if I'm, you know, for some reason I've not slept well in several nights in a row and I can just tell physically I need, you know, a really good night's sleep. I'll take a melatonin tablet and it actually, I wake up feeling the next day incredibly refreshed. Obviously, if you use it too much, the effects of it will also diminish. I mean, melatonin is something our body naturally produces as we get to evening time to help cue our body it's time to go to sleep. So it just gives that added boost. So, another big factor I want to address before we finish, and I know we're getting close here on time, but as far as being a little bit over here, but I know I didn't start right on time either. So I want to talk about what happens if you wake up during the middle of the night, essentially, because obviously we've all been there. So big thing is try to stay out of your head. Don't stress about your inability to fall asleep again, because that's only going to stress you out and encourage your body to do exactly that. Focus on the feelings in your body. Practice breathing exercises, you know, something to basically calm your body back down and it'll go back to sleep. Remember, make relaxation your goal, not sleep, because if you make relaxation your goal, eventually your body's going to go to sleep anyway because it's just going to get so relaxed and you're not focused on the fact you're not asleep. And then if you really can't fall back asleep, you know, after like 20 minutes, like we talked about before, if you're in bed and can't fall asleep, get up and do a non-stimulating activity. Obviously, if you have a partner, you might need to go to a different room or something. You know, read a book. Obviously, don't turn your phone on, don't turn the TV on, don't do anything with a screen, essentially. But keep the lights dim and avoid anything that's going to cue your body that it's time to wake up. You know, if you can, turn the lights on. That would be great. And then try to postpone any worrying or brainstorming. You know, if you wake up feeling anxious about something, make a brief note on it, on a piece of paper, and then put it aside. As I mentioned, this is a very powerful tool that our brain is actually like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. It's written down. I will, you know, it's there for me to look at tomorrow. So this is something that's super, super key. So those are the big tips there. I cannot stress enough the importance of sleep. And I really wish all of you guys a good night's sleep. Remember, sleep is one of the most important things that you can do to help your body stay healthy. It's going to help you feel more focused, help you be more productive. So the big thing here is obviously do your body the favor it needs and give it the sleep it has to have. Once again, thank you guys for joining me. I am super excited. I got to see you guys today. I was a little tad concerned with my webcam and computer doing whatever they were going to do. But otherwise, you guys have a good rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week.